The splash of chlorinated water hit Maya's face like a slap, cold and deliberate. Chief Petty Officer Derek Garrison stood over her, his massive frame blocking the morning sun, water still dripping from his cupped hands. "Listen, sweetheart," he said, loud enough for the 40 recruits to hear. "Why don't you run back to whatever yoga class you wandered away from? This is a military training facility, not a daycare." Maya wiped the water from her eyes slowly, deliberately. Her hand moved to her back pocket. "Before I respond to that, Chief," she said quietly, "I need you to understand something about the woman you just assaulted. Before we continue, please subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. Stay with me until the end of this story. You won't believe where it goes. And comment below with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let's get back to what happened next." The morning had started 3 hours earlier, at 5:30, when Maya Chen pulled her Honda Civic into the parking lot of the Naval Special Warfare Training Center in San Diego. She'd deliberately arrived early, deliberately dressed in civilian workout clothes, black leggings, a gray tank top, running shoes. No rank insignia, no name tape. Nothing that would identify her as the new lead combat instructor who was about to turn this place upside down. She wanted to observe first, watch how the system really worked when no one knew the boss was watching. The security guard at the gate had waved her through without a second glance. Just another contractor or admin worker arriving for the early shift. Perfect. Maya made her way across the compound toward the Olympic-sized training pool, where she knew Chief Petty Officer Derek Garrison would be running his infamous 0600 water confidence drills. She'd read his file on the drive from her apartment. 15 years as a Navy SEAL, 12 years as an instructor, 92% success rate with recruits, 3 formal complaints filed and dismissed, 2 informal complaints that never made it into official records. The pattern was clear to anyone who knew how to read between the lines. She positioned herself near the equipment shed, close enough to observe, but far enough to blend into the background. The pool area was already alive with activity. 40 recruits in their early 20s, shivering in their wetsuits despite the mild California morning, waiting for the torture to begin. Garrison emerged from the instructor's office like a bull entering the arena. 6'3", 240 pounds of muscle and attitude. His voice carried across the pool deck before he even reached the water's edge. "Listen up, tadpoles. Today we're going to find out which of you has what it takes, and which of you should have stayed home with mommy." The recruits snapped to attention. Maya watched their faces, some excited, some terrified, all trying to hide any emotion that might be perceived as weakness. "Water confidence exercise. You're going to swim 4 lengths of this pool underwater. No surface breaks, no excuses. If you surface before completing all 4 lengths, you start over. If you start over 3 times, you're done. Finished. Gone. Do you understand?" "Yes, Chief!" the recruits shouted in unison. Maya's jaw tightened. 4 lengths underwater without surfacing? That was roughly 200 meters. Even experienced combat swimmers rarely pushed past 150 without a breath. This wasn't training. This was a setup designed to create failures. "First group, in the water, now!" 10 recruits jumped into the pool and submerged. Maya started a mental timer, watching their forms disappear beneath the surface. She could see their shadows moving along the bottom, strong at first, then gradually slowing as oxygen debt accumulated. The first recruit surfaced at the 70-meter mark, gasping desperately. "Martinez! You worthless piece of garbage! Get out of my pool! You just failed!" Garrison's voice was pure contempt. The recruit, a young man who couldn't have been more than 20, dragged himself out of the water, devastation written across his face. 3 more recruits surfaced before completing the distance. Garrison berated each one with increasing creativity, his insults echoing across the training facility. Then Maya noticed recruit number 7, a kid named Peterson according to the name on his wetsuit. He was still underwater, but his movements had changed. The smooth, efficient strokes had become erratic, desperate. His form was deteriorating rapidly. Maya stepped closer to the pool's edge, her trained eye recognizing the signs immediately. Shallow water blackout. The kid's brain was shutting down from oxygen deprivation, but the hypoxic state was preventing him from recognizing the danger. In about 15 seconds, he was going to lose consciousness underwater. She looked at Garrison. The chief was focused on the recruits who had surfaced, publicly humiliating them, completely unaware that one of his swimmers was about to drown. "Chief!" Maya called out, her voice sharp with authority. "Peterson is in distress!" Garrison's head whipped around, his eyes finding her for the first time. His expression shifted from surprise to irritation in an instant. "Who the hell are you? This is a restricted training area." "Your recruit is about to black out," Maya pointed at the pool. "Look at his stroke pattern. He's losing motor control." Garrison glanced at the water dismissively. "Lady, I've been training SEALs since before you were in high school. Peterson is fine. He's just fighting through the discomfort. That's what we do here." Maya watched Peterson's shadow. His movements were barely propulsion now, more like random spasms. She had maybe 10 seconds before he went under for good. "Chief, with all due respect, that recruit is showing textbook signs of hypoxic blackout. His lateral control is gone, his kick pattern is asymmetrical, and his depth is increasing. He's not fighting through discomfort, he's shutting down." Garrison took 3 large steps toward her, using his size to intimidate. "Listen here, miss. I don't know if you're someone's girlfriend or some civilian contractor who wandered into the wrong area, but you need to shut your mouth and leave. Now." "I'm not leaving while that recruit is in danger." "Danger?" Garrison's laugh was harsh and mocking. "The only danger here is you disrupting my training with your hysterical female nonsense. These men are preparing for combat. If they can't handle a little pool exercise, they'll never survive in the field." Below the surface, Peterson had stopped moving forward entirely. His body was sinking slowly toward the bottom of the 12-foot-deep pool. Maya didn't wait for permission. She kicked off her shoes and dove into the water, fully clothed. The cold shocked her system. They kept the training pools at 68 degrees to simulate ocean conditions, but her body responded automatically, years of conditioning overriding the initial discomfort. She reached Peterson in 4 powerful strokes. His eyes were half closed, his movements completely uncoordinated. She grabbed him under the arms and kicked hard for the surface, supporting his full weight while maintaining perfect form. They broke the surface together. Peterson gasped and coughed, sucking in air with desperate, rattling breaths. "Easy, easy," Maya said calmly, keeping his head above water. "You're okay. Just breathe. In through your nose, out through your mouth. There you go." She swam them both to the pool's edge, where several stunned recruits reached down to help pull Peterson out. Maya hauled herself up after him, water streaming from her clothes. Garrison stood at the edge, his face purple with rage. "What the hell do you think you're doing? You just contaminated my training exercise. You made my recruit look weak in front of his entire class." Maya knelt beside Peterson, checking his pupils and pulse rate with practiced efficiency. The kid was conscious but disoriented, his skin pale and clammy. "Your recruit was 30 seconds from drowning," she said without looking up. "He needs medical evaluation for possible pulmonary edema and neurological assessment for hypoxic brain injury." "Medical evaluation?" Garrison's voice dripped with sarcasm. "He needs to toughen up. This is SEAL training, not summer camp." Maya stood, water dripping from her clothes, and finally made direct eye contact with the chief. Her voice was quiet, but carried absolute authority. "Chief Petty Officer Garrison, you have 2 choices right now. You can call for medical transport for this recruit, or I can. But either way, he's getting proper medical attention within the next 60 seconds. Garrison's eyes narrowed. Who the hell do you think you are, giving me orders? The 40 recruits had formed a loose circle around them, watching the confrontation with wide eyes. Several other instructors had emerged from the office building, drawn by the commotion. Maya took a step closer to Garrison, not backing down despite their significant size difference. I'm someone who knows the difference between tough training and negligent endangerment. I'm someone who's watched good recruits die because instructors were too proud to admit they'd pushed too far. And I'm someone who's not going to stand by while you prove your manhood at the expense of a recruit's life. Garrison's face went from purple to almost crimson. A vein in his temple throbbed visibly. The other instructors were watching now, including Master Chief Roland Beck, Garrison's longtime mentor, and the real power behind the training program's informal hierarchy. You want to talk about manhood? Garrison's voice was dangerously low. You want to lecture me about training SEALs? You're not even military. You're just some civilian who thinks she knows better than combat veterans. Actually, Maya began, but Garrison cut her off. No, I've had enough of your mouth. He cupped his hands and scooped water from the pool, then splashed it directly into Maya's face with deliberate force. Maybe this will cool off that smart mouth of yours. Now get the hell off my pool deck before I have security remove you. The water hit Maya square in the face, running down her hair, already wet from the rescue. The gesture was deliberately humiliating, designed to put her in her place in front of dozens of witnesses. The pool deck went absolutely silent. Maya stood completely still for a long moment, water dripping from her chin. Then, very slowly, she wiped her face with the back of her hand. Her expression remained calm, almost serene, but those who looked closely could see something dangerous flickering in her eyes. Chief Petty Officer Garrison, she said quietly, did you just assault a superior officer? Garrison's confident sneer didn't waver. Superior officer? Lady, you're not even wearing a uniform. You're just some civilian who… Maya reached into her back pocket and pulled out a waterproof credential case. She flipped it open and held it up for everyone to see. The plastic military ID card was standard issue, designed to withstand exactly these kinds of conditions. It clearly displayed her photograph, her name, and her rank. Lieutenant Maya Chen, United States Navy SEALs, she announced, her voice carrying across the now silent pool deck. As of 0600 hours this morning, which was 17 minutes ago, I am the lead combat instructor for this training facility. I am your commanding officer, Chief. And you just assaulted me in front of 40 witnesses. The color drained from Garrison's face like someone had opened a valve. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. No sound came out. The recruits stood frozen, processing what they'd just witnessed. Their terrifying, untouchable instructor had just publicly humiliated and physically assaulted his new boss. Master Chief Beck stepped forward from the group of instructors, his weathered face carefully neutral. Lieutenant Chen, I'm Master Chief Roland Beck. Welcome to the training center. I apologize for this unfortunate misunderstanding. Maya turned her attention to Beck, reading the calculation in his eyes. He was already trying to minimize the situation, frame it as a simple mistake rather than a pattern of behavior. Master Chief, this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was an instructor who ignored safety protocols, endangered a recruit, and then physically assaulted a superior officer when confronted about it. There's nothing unclear about what just happened. Beck's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Of course, Lieutenant. I simply meant that Chief Garrison was unaware of your identity. I'm sure if he had known… If he had known, he would have what? listened to my safety concerns, provided medical attention to a recruit in distress, refrained from physically assaulting me? Maya's voice remained calm but cut like a blade. The fact that he only would have shown respect if he knew my rank is exactly the problem, Master Chief. She turned back to Garrison, who still looked like he might vomit. Chief, you will report to my office at 0900 hours. That gives you 2 hours to think very carefully about what just happened here and what you're going to say about it. Do you understand? Yes. Yes, ma'am, Garrison managed, his voice barely above a whisper. Maya knelt beside Peterson again. The recruit's color was returning, but he was shaking, whether from cold, oxygen deprivation, or the shock of watching his instructor get destroyed. It was hard to tell. Petty Officer Williams, Maya called to one of the other instructors, a younger man who'd been watching with obvious shock. Call for medical transport. I want Peterson evaluated for pulmonary edema, hypoxic injury, and hypothermia. Full workup. Yes, ma'am. Right away, ma'am. Williams practically ran toward the office building. Maya looked at the gathered recruits. The rest of you? Training is suspended for the remainder of this morning. Report to the mess hall for breakfast, then return to your barracks for equipment maintenance. Training will resume at 1300 hours with revised protocols. Yes, ma'am, they responded in unison, their voices sharp with a new kind of energy. They just watched the system change right in front of them. As the recruits began to disperse, Maya heard their whispered conversations. Did you see his face when she pulled out that ID? She saved Peterson's life, man. He was gone. Garrison's finished. You can't assault an officer. His career is over. Maya wrung water from her tank top, acutely aware that her civilian clothes were now completely soaked and clinging to her frame. Not exactly the professional image she'd planned for her first day as commanding officer. But sometimes the universe had its own plans. Master Chief Beck approached her again, his voice lower this time, meant for her ears only. Lieutenant, perhaps we should discuss this situation privately. Chief Garrison is a decorated veteran with an exemplary record. I'm sure we can resolve this incident without making it official. Maya met his eyes directly. Master Chief, let me be very clear about something. I didn't come here to maintain the status quo. I came here because 3 separate investigations flagged this facility for safety concerns and instructor conduct issues. What happened this morning isn't an isolated incident. It's a symptom of a systemic problem, and we're going to fix it. Beck's friendly mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something harder underneath. This facility has successfully trained SEALs for over 2 decades, Lieutenant. Our methods work. Your methods have also resulted in 4 preventable deaths in the last 6 years, 17 serious injuries that required extended medical treatment, and a recruit washout rate that's 12% higher than comparable facilities. So yes, your methods work. If your goal is to prove how tough you are, rather than actually producing qualified operators. Beck's eyes narrowed. You've been here less than 20 minutes, and you think you understand how we operate? I've been studying this facility for 3 months, Master Chief. I've read every incident report, every medical file, every exit interview from recruits who washed out. I know exactly how you operate. The question is whether you're going to help me improve it, or whether you're going to be part of the problem I'm here to solve. Before Beck could respond, Petty Officer Williams returned with 2 Navy medics and a stretcher. They quickly began evaluating Peterson, asking him questions to assess his neurological function while checking his vital signs. One of the medics looked up at Maya. Ma'am, his blood oxygen is at 89%. Another minute or 2 underwater and we'd be looking at permanent brain damage or death. Good call getting him out when you did. Maya nodded, but her attention was on Garrison, who had heard the medic's assessment. The chief's face had gone from red to gray. The reality of how close he'd come to having a recruit die under his watch finally sinking in. Chief, Maya said, not unkindly. Go get cleaned up and prepare for our meeting. I suggest you spend the next 2 hours thinking about whether you want to continue your career in the Navy, because that decision is largely going to depend on what you say to me at 0900. Garrison nodded mutely and walked away, his shoulders slumped, looking smaller than he had just minutes before. The medics loaded Peterson onto the stretcher. As they prepared to wheel him away, the recruit looked up at Maya. "Thank you, ma'am," he said, his voice rough. I thought I could make it. I didn't realize I was in trouble until everything started going dark." "That's how hypoxia works," Maya said gently. "Your brain stops being able to assess danger accurately. That's why we have safety protocols, to protect you from situations where your own judgment becomes unreliable." "None of this was your fault, Peterson. You were following orders from your instructor. He's the one who put you in that situation." As the medics wheeled Peterson away, Maya became aware of how many people were watching her. Word had clearly spread, and personnel from across the facility had found reasons to be near the pool area. She could feel their eyes on her, could hear the whispered conversations. Petty Officer Sarah Kim, one of the junior instructors, approached hesitantly. She was in her late 20s, with sharp eyes and a competent demeanor that Maya had noted in her personnel file. "Lieutenant Chen, ma'am, is there anything you need? A change of clothes, or?" Maya looked down at her soaked civilian clothes and laughed despite herself. "That would be great, actually. This wasn't exactly how I planned to make my first impression." Kim smiled cautiously. "If it helps, ma'am, it was a hell of a first impression. The recruits are already calling you the lieutenant who dove in. They're going to follow you anywhere after this." "I didn't do it for their loyalty. I did it because Peterson was drowning." "I know, ma'am. That's exactly why they'll follow you." Kim led Maya toward the women's locker room, which was significantly smaller than the men's, another thing on Maya's list of issues to address. "Can I speak freely, ma'am?" Kim asked, as she pulled a spare uniform from her locker. "Always. I need people who will tell me the truth, not what they think I want to hear." Kim handed her the uniform. It would be slightly too large, but it would work. "Chief Garrison isn't going to be your only problem. Master Chief Beck has been running this facility his way for almost 10 years. The official chain of command exists on paper, but the real power structure is different. Instructors who challenge Beck's methods get transferred out. Recruits who complain get labeled as weak and washed out." "And you? How have you survived here?" Kim's smile was tight. "By being good enough that they can't get rid of me, and quiet enough that they don't see me as a threat. At least, that's how it's been. I have a feeling things are about to change." Maya changed quickly, the dry uniform a relief after the cold, wet civilian clothes. "Things are definitely going to change. The question is whether people like you are going to help me change them, or whether you're going to keep your head down and wait to see who wins." Kim met her eyes directly. "I became an instructor because I believed in the mission, ma'am. Training warriors who can protect our country. But somewhere along the way, this facility stopped being about the mission and started being about egos and tradition for its own sake. If you're really here to fix that, then yes, ma'am, I'll help you." "Good. I'm going to need allies who understand how things really work here." Maya checked her watch. "I've got 90 minutes before Garrison shows up at my office. Tell me everything I need to know about the informal power structure here. Names, relationships, who owes who favors, who's got dirt on who, everything." For the next hour and a half, Kim laid it all out. The unofficial hierarchy that superseded the official chain of command. The instructors who enforced Beck's vision of traditional training through intimidation and peer pressure. The safety complaints that had been buried or reframed as weakness. The recruits who'd been driven out not because they lacked ability, but because they'd questioned methods or reported concerns. By the time Maya walked into her new office at 0850, she understood exactly what she was up against. This wasn't just about Garrison's behavior at the pool. This was about an entire system that had calcified around the egos of a few powerful men who valued their own authority more than the actual mission. Her office was Spartan. A desk, a computer, filing cabinets, and a wall of commendations and photographs from previous lead combat instructors. She noticed that her immediate predecessor, Lieutenant Commander James Walsh, had lasted only 8 months before requesting a transfer. The rumor was he'd left due to philosophical differences with facility culture. Translation: Beck had made his life hell until he gave up and left. Maya sat behind her desk and pulled up Garrison's personnel file on the computer. 15 years of service, multiple commendations, high performance evaluations year after year. But reading between the lines, she could see the pattern. The evaluations praised his demanding standards and refusal to compromise on excellence, language that was code for aggressive, possibly abusive behavior that superior officers had chosen to ignore because his success metrics looked good on paper. At precisely 900 hours, there was a knock on her door. "Come in?" Garrison entered and stood at rigid attention. He'd changed into a fresh uniform, but his face still showed the stress of the morning. His eyes were red-rimmed, and he looked like he'd aged 5 years in the last 2 hours. "Chief Petty Officer Derek Garrison reporting as ordered, ma'am." "At ease, Chief. Have a seat." Garrison sat reluctantly, his posture remaining stiffly formal. Maya studied him for a long moment, letting the silence stretch. Finally, she spoke. "Chief, do you know why you're here?" "Yes, ma'am. I behaved inappropriately toward a superior officer. I endangered recruit safety. I failed to recognize a medical emergency. I physically assaulted you. Ma'am, His voice cracked slightly. "I have no excuse for my actions." "You're right. You don't. But I want to understand how a decorated veteran with 15 years of service makes those kinds of fundamental errors in judgment. So I'm going to ask you a question, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Can you do that?" "Yes, ma'am." "Did my age and gender influence your behavior this morning?" The question hung in the air. Garrison clearly wanted to deny it, to find some other explanation for his actions. But Maya's direct gaze demanded honesty. "Yes, ma'am," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. When I saw a young woman in civilian clothes, I assumed you couldn't possibly understand military training. I assumed you were just some girlfriend or contractor who'd wandered into the wrong place. I was wrong. About everything." Maya nodded slowly. "Thank you for your honesty." That assumption almost cost Peterson his life. It definitely cost you your career as you knew it. But here's what I need you to understand, Chief. This morning wasn't just about your assumptions about me. It was about a training philosophy that prioritizes toughness over safety, ego over effectiveness. She pulled out a folder and opened it on her desk. "I've reviewed your training records for the past 3 years. Your safety incidents have been increasing. You've had 14 recruits require medical intervention for preventable injuries. Your push-through-the-pain philosophy has resulted in 3 stress fractures that ended promising careers, 2 cases of rhabdomyolysis that required hospitalization, and now Peterson's near drowning. The only reason you haven't faced consequences is because Master Chief Beck has been protecting you." Garrison's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. "So here's what's going to happen," Maya continued. "I'm giving you a choice. You can request a transfer to another facility, no questions asked. This incident will remain between us, and you can continue your career elsewhere. Or you can stay here and help me rebuild this training program into something better. Something that maintains our high standards while actually keeping recruits safe. Garrison looked stunned. Ma'am, I assaulted you. I endangered a recruit. You're giving me a choice? I'm giving you the opportunity to be part of the solution instead of being part of the problem. But I need to know if you're capable of changing your approach. Because if you stay, you don't work for Master Chief Beck anymore. You work for me, and my standards are different. Different how, ma'am? I believe in pushing people to their absolute limits. But I believe in knowing where those limits actually are. I believe in creating warriors who are tough because they're competent, not tough because they've survived hazing. I believe safety protocols exist to enable peak performance, not prevent it. Can you work within that framework? Garrison was quiet for a long moment. Ma'am, I've been doing this the same way for 12 years. It's the way I was trained, the way Beck trained me. I don't know if I can change. That's honest. I appreciate that. Maya leaned forward. But here's the thing, Chief. The fact that you're questioning yourself right now shows me that you're capable of growth. The Derek Garrison who walked into this office is already different from the Derek Garrison who splashed water in my face this morning. The question is whether you want to keep growing or whether you want to stay stuck in old patterns. If I stay, what would that look like? You would shadow me during training sessions, learn different approaches to achieving the same results. You'd work with our medical team to understand the physiology of stress and injury. You'd help me develop new protocols that maintain our standards while reducing preventable harm. And you'd model for other instructors that it's possible to change, to admit mistakes, to become better. Garrison's hands were shaking slightly. Maya could see the war playing out behind his eyes. Pride versus humility. Tradition versus adaptation. Ego versus growth. Ma'am, can I ask you something? Of course. Why are you giving me this chance? After what I did to you, you could end my career with one report. Why aren't you? Maya sat back in her chair. Because I've seen good instructors turn into bad ones when the system rewards the wrong behaviors. You're not a bad person, Chief. You're a good person who got trapped in a toxic culture. And sometimes the best discipline is the opportunity to do better. She paused, then added, Also, the men respect you. That respect can work for us or against us. If you become an ally in changing this culture, your influence could help transform this entire facility. If you leave, Beck will just use you as an example of what happens when you challenge his authority. Garrison absorbed this. What about Master Chief Beck? He's not going to support these changes. Beck is a different problem, but I need to know right now, are you with me or not? The silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds. Finally, Garrison spoke. Ma'am, I want to stay. I want to learn. I want to be the instructor I thought I was, instead of the one I actually am. Maya felt something loosen in her chest. Good. Then we start tomorrow morning, 05:30. You'll observe my training methods with the next recruit class. I'll expect questions, challenges, and honest feedback. But what I won't tolerate is defensiveness or ego. Can you work with that? Yes, ma'am. I can try. That's all I ask. As Garrison stood to leave, Maya added one more thing. Chief, one more question. The recruits who washed out under your training, the ones who left because they couldn't handle your methods, do you ever wonder if some of them would have made excellent SEALs under a different training approach? Garrison stopped at the door, his hand on the knob. His shoulders sagged slightly. Every day, ma'am. Every single day. After he left, Maya sat alone in her office, processing everything that had happened in the past 4 hours. She'd arrived planning to observe quietly, to assess the situation before revealing herself. Instead, she'd saved a recruit's life, been publicly humiliated, revealed her rank in front of dozens of witnesses, and turned a potential enemy into a potential ally. Not exactly by the book, but sometimes the right thing to do wasn't the planned thing. Her phone buzzed with a text from Base Commander Captain Richard Morrison, her direct superior. Heard about the pool incident. My office, 1100 hours. Maya smiled grimly. The real battles were just beginning. Captain Morrison's office was on the 3rd floor of the administrative building, overlooking the entire training complex. Maya arrived at 10:55 hours, giving herself a 5-minute buffer to collect her thoughts. She could see the pool area from the hallway window. Recruits were back in formation, but the energy had changed. Even from this distance, she could sense it. Morrison's assistant, a petty officer named Chen, no relation, gestured her toward the closed door.
He's expecting you, ma'am. Fair warning, Master Chief Beck arrived about 10 minutes ago.
Of course he did. Maya straightened her borrowed uniform and knocked once. Come in. Captain Morrison stood behind his desk, a man in his late 50s with silver hair and the weathered face of someone who'd spent decades at sea. Master Chief Beck sat in one of the visitor chairs, his posture relaxed, but his eyes sharp. Lieutenant Chen, have a seat. Morrison's voice was neutral, giving nothing away. Maya sat in the chair next to Beck, maintaining professional distance. Morrison picked up a file from his desk. I've received 3 phone calls in the last hour about an incident at the training pool. The stories vary wildly, so I'd like to hear your version directly. Of course, sir. At approximately 6:15 hours, I was observing Chief Garrison's water confidence training when I identified a recruit experiencing hypoxic distress. I attempted to alert Chief Garrison to the safety issue. He dismissed my concern and ordered me to leave the training area. When the recruit's condition deteriorated further, I entered the water to prevent drowning. Chief Garrison then physically assaulted me by splashing water in my face. I identified myself as his commanding officer at that point. Beck shifted in his chair. Captain, if I may, Lieutenant Chen's account leaves out some important context. Chief Garrison had no way of knowing who she was. She was in civilian clothes, observing training without authorization. I had authorization, Master Chief, Maya interrupted calmly. I reported to base security at 05:30 hours with my orders and credentials. I was granted access to observe training operations prior to my official start time of 0600 hours. Beck's jaw tightened. Even so, her intervention disrupted established training protocols. Established protocols that nearly killed a recruit, Maya said. The medics confirmed Peterson's blood oxygen was at 89% when they arrived. Another minute underwater and we'd be discussing a fatality, not a disrupted training session. Morrison held up his hand. Master Chief, I'll hear your perspective in a moment. Lieutenant Chen, continue. After identifying myself, I suspended the remainder of morning training and ordered medical evaluation for the recruit. I scheduled a meeting with Chief Garrison for 0900 hours to address the incident. That meeting concluded approximately 30 minutes ago. And the outcome of that meeting? Chief Garrison acknowledged his errors in judgment and accepted responsibility for the safety violation and assault. I gave him the option to transfer or to remain under my command with modified duties pending retraining. Morrison's eyebrows rose slightly. You didn't recommend disciplinary action? I believe Chief Garrison can be more valuable as part of the solution than as an example of the problem, sir. However, I made it clear that any future violations would result in immediate formal charges. Beck couldn't contain himself any longer. Captain Morrison, with all due respect, this sets a dangerous precedent. Chief Garrison is one of our most experienced instructors. Having him retrained by someone who arrived at this facility less than 4 hours ago undermines the entire instructor cadre.
Morrison turns to Beck.
Master Chief, Lieutenant Shen's credentials include 18 months as Assistant Combat Instructor at SEAL Team 2, where she developed the revised water safety protocols that have been adopted across 3 training facilities. Her methods reduced training injuries by 41%, while maintaining qualification standards. That's why she's here. The temperature in the room dropped noticeably. Beck's face remained neutral, but his hands gripped the armrests of his chair. Sir, I wasn't informed that we were implementing new protocols. You're being informed now. Morrison's voice carried an edge that made it clear this wasn't a discussion. Lieutenant Chen has been brought in specifically to modernize our training approach. Your cooperation with that mission is expected, Master Chief. Beck stood abruptly. Captain, I've served at this facility for 12 years. I've trained some of the finest SEALs in the Navy. If my methods are suddenly inadequate, your methods have produced a recruit injury rate that's 17% above the Navy average, Master Chief. Your safety incident reports show patterns that 3 separate oversight committees have flagged as concerning. And in the last 6 years, 4 recruits have died during training under protocols you helped establish. So yes, your methods need updating. The words landed like physical blows. Beck's face flushed, but he kept his voice level. Those deaths were investigated and ruled accidental, sir. Accidental deaths that might have been prevented with better safety protocols. Morrison shot back. Deaths that happened because instructors prioritized tradition over common sense. That ends now. Maya watched Beck process this, saw the moment he shifted from defending himself to calculating his next move. He was too smart to keep arguing when he'd already lost this battle. Instead, he'd regroup and find another way to resist. Understood, sir. Lieutenant Chen will have my full cooperation. The words were correct, but the tone suggested otherwise. Good. You're dismissed, Master Chief. Beck left without another word, but the look he gave Maya as he passed her chair promised this was far from over. After the door closed, Morrison sat back down and rubbed his temples. That could have gone better. Could have gone worse, too, sir. Morrison smiled slightly. True, Beck could have thrown a chair. He pulled out another file. Let's talk about what you're walking into, Lieutenant. This facility has been Beck's kingdom for over a decade. The official chain of command exists, but the real power structure runs through him. Instructors who cross him get transferred. Recruits who complain get washed out. Previous commanding officers who tried to change things lasted an average of 7 months before requesting reassignment. I read Lieutenant Commander Walsh's exit interview, sir. He cited irreconcilable philosophical differences. Walsh was a good officer, but he made the mistake of thinking official authority would be enough. Beck has allies at every level, instructors who owe him their careers, senior NCOs who came up under his system, even a few officers who believe his old-school approach is the only thing keeping standards high. What do you believe, sir? Morrison met her eyes directly. I believe standards and safety aren't opposites. I believe Beck's methods worked in a different era, but warfare has changed. Our training needs to change too. I also believe that if you try to force that change too quickly, Beck will destroy you professionally and enjoy doing it. What's your recommendation, sir? Build alliances. Identify the instructors who are quietly frustrated with the current system. Document everything. Every safety violation, every protocol breach, every incident that Beck tries to minimize or hide. And most importantly, prove that your methods actually work. Give me results I can take to the Oversight Committee. Maya nodded, absorbing this. How much time do I have? Officially, you have full authority to implement changes immediately. Morrison paused. Realistically, you have until the next serious incident. When, not if, something goes wrong under your watch, Beck will use it to prove that modern methods are weak and dangerous. You need wins on the board before that happens.
Understood, sir.
As Maya stood to leave, Morrison added one more thing. Lieutenant, this morning you saved a recruit's life and handled a bad situation about as well as anyone could. But Beck has been planning his defense of this facility for years. You've been here 4 hours. Don't underestimate him. Walking back to her office, Maya ran into Petty Officer Kim in the hallway.
Ma'am, you've got a situation developing.
What kind of situation? 3 recruits from Garrison's morning session are requesting to speak with you. They're in the waiting area outside your office. They look scared. Maya quickened her pace. When she reached her office, she found 3 young men in their early 20s standing at rigid attention. She recognized them from the pool. They'd been part of the group that witnessed everything. At ease, gentlemen. Come inside. They filed into her office. The tallest one, whose name tape read Sullivan, spoke first.
Ma'am, we need to report something. About this morning. About the training.
I'm listening. Sullivan glanced at his companions, drawing courage from their presence.
Ma'am, Peterson wasn't the first recruit to have problems during Chief Garrison's water confidence drills. 2 weeks ago, recruit Davidson passed out during the same exercise. He managed to surface before he blacked out completely, but he was in bad shape.
Chief Garrison made him repeat the exercise the next day as punishment for showing weakness.
The second recruit, Martinez, the one Garrison had berated for surfacing early, spoke up.
Ma'am, I surfaced because I saw Davidson's training footage. I knew if I pushed through like Peterson did, I might not make it. But when I came up for air, Chief Garrison told me I was done, finished, that I'd never be a SEAL because I didn't have the heart for it.
Maya kept her voice calm, but inside she was calculating.
Where is Davidson now?
Medical leave, ma'am, the third recruit, Jackson, said quietly.
He passed the exercise on the second attempt, but he collapsed during the next day's run. The docs said his kidneys were damaged from the repeated hypoxic stress. He's at Balboa Medical Center.
Maya pulled out a notepad.
I need you to write down everything you remember. Dates, times, what was said, who witnessed it, everything.
Sullivan hesitated. Ma'am, if we file an official complaint, the other instructors will know. Master Chief Beck will know. We'll be marked as troublemakers. We'll wash out.
Not under my command, you won't. You have my word.
Ma'am, with respect, Martinez's voice cracked slightly.
We've heard that before. Recruit Thompson filed a safety complaint last month. 3 days later, he was gone. Beck called it a voluntary withdrawal, but we all know what really happened.
Maya set down her pen and looked at each of them directly.
Here's what I can promise you. If you come forward with the truth, I will protect you to the absolute limits of my authority. If anyone retaliates against you, they'll answer to me. But I need you to understand something. This isn't just about protecting yourselves. This is about protecting every recruit who comes after you. If we don't stop this pattern now, someone is going to die.
The 3 recruits exchanged glances. Finally, Sullivan nodded. We'll write down everything, ma'am. Good. Take your time, be thorough, and bring it directly to me, not to any other instructor. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
After they left, Maya sat down heavily in her chair. 4 hours into her new command, and she already had evidence of a pattern of abuse, a hostile, informal power structure, and 3 recruits who were risking their careers to come forward. Her phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number.
Lieutenant Chen?
Lieutenant, this is Commander Jennifer Walsh. You don't know me, but I'm Lieutenant Commander James Walsh's wife.
Maya's pulse quickened. Walsh was her predecessor, the one who'd lasted only 8 months. "Ma'am, how can I help you?" "My husband asked me to call you. He wanted to warn you personally, but he's not in good shape, Lieutenant. What happened at that facility broke something in him. He won't talk about it, even to me, but I've watched him deteriorate for 6 months."
I'm sorry to hear that.
"Don't be sorry. Be careful. James tried to change things. He documented everything, built his case, went through official channels. Beck destroyed him anyway. They made his life hell until he couldn't take it anymore. The official story was philosophical differences, but the truth is, they pushed him until he had a breakdown."
Maya's grip tightened on the phone. "Why are you telling me this?"
"Because James said if they brought in someone new to try again, she'd need to know what she was up against. He said Beck has files on everyone. Leverage. Things people thought were private. He uses it to keep people in line or to destroy them when they become problems."
"Do you know what kind of leverage?"
"No, James wouldn't tell me specifics. He said it was safer if I didn't know. But, Lieutenant, whatever you're planning to do, be very, very careful. Beck isn't just protecting his training methods. He's protecting something bigger."
Something worth destroying careers over. The call ended, leaving Maya staring at her phone. A knock at her door. Kim entered, her face pale.
"Ma'am, we have a problem. The afternoon training schedule just got posted. Beck scheduled you to lead the Advanced Combat Water Survival course tomorrow at 0600. "That's a problem. Why?" "Because that course is designed to push experienced operators to their limits. It's brutal even for seasoned SEALs. Beck only runs it twice a year because of how dangerous it is. He's scheduled you to lead it on your second day, in front of the entire instructor cadre and senior command staff."
Maya felt the trap closing.
"He's setting me up to fail." "Yes, ma'am. If you complete the course, you'll be too exhausted to effectively command. If you don't complete it, he'll use it as proof that you're not qualified to lead combat instructors. And if anyone gets injured during the exercise, he'll blame your inexperience." "Can I refuse?" "Technically, yes,
But he's framed it as a standard qualification requirement for all lead instructors. If you refuse, he'll say you're unwilling to meet the same standards you expect from others. Maya stood and walked to the window, looking out over the training complex. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the pool where this morning's confrontation had occurred.
"What do you know about this course?"
Kim pulled out a file. It's a 12-hour endurance test. Starts with a 5-mile ocean swim in full combat gear, followed by underwater obstacle navigation, followed by a simulated combat scenario where you're operating on no sleep and depleted oxygen. The failure rate is about 60%, even among experienced operators.
"Has Beck completed it?"
He designed it, ma'am. He's completed it 17 times. It's his signature achievement. Maya turned back to Kim.
"Then I guess I'd better study the course parameters tonight."
Can you get me the complete specs? Ma'am, you don't have to do this. You could postpone it for a few weeks. Give yourself time to... To what? Show weakness? Give Beck ammunition? Number. If he wants to test me, let's get it over with. Maya paused. But I'm not going in blind. I need complete course data, water temperatures, current patterns, equipment requirements, previous performance metrics, everything. I'll have it on your desk in an hour. Make it 30 minutes. And Kim, who else on the instructor team might be willing to help me prepare? Kim considered this carefully. Petty Officer Chen, different Chen, everyone calls him KC to avoid confusion. He's completed the course 3 times. He's quiet, doesn't get involved in Beck's politics. I think he's frustrated with how things are run, but he's never said anything publicly. Get him. Tell him I need a training partner tonight. Someone who can show me what to expect. Ma'am, it's already 16:30. You'd be training all night. Then I'd better get started. Kim left to make the arrangements. Maya pulled out her phone and texted her parents' group chat.
First day interesting. Can't talk details yet. Love you both.
Her father's response came immediately. Interesting good or interesting bad?
Yes.
Her mother's reply.
Remember, the fights worth having are never easy. We're proud of you.
Maya smiled, despite the exhaustion already creeping into her bones. She had maybe 16 hours before Beck's test. 16 hours to prepare for a course designed to break even the strongest operators. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from an unknown number. Lieutenant Chen, this is Derek Garrison. I heard about tomorrow's test. I've completed that course 4 times. If you want help preparing, I'll be at the pool at 1900 hours. No obligation. Just an offer from someone who owes you.
Maya stared at the message.
Garrison, the man who'd assaulted her this morning, was offering to help her survive Beck's trap. The same man she'd given a second chance to was already proving whether he meant what he'd said about wanting to change. She texted back, 1900 hours. Come prepared to work. His reply was immediate. Yes, ma'am. By 1900 hours, Maya had reviewed every piece of data Kim had provided on the course. KC, Petty Officer Kenneth Chen, had arrived at 1830 to walk her through the technical challenges. And now, Garrison stood at the pool's edge in workout gear, looking uncertain but determined.
Thank you for coming, Chief, Maya said.
Thank you for letting me, ma'am. Garrison gestured to the pool. The course starts in the ocean, but the basic principles are the same. The biggest killer isn't the distance or the obstacles. It's the mental game. Beck designs his course to break your will before it breaks your body. KC nodded agreement.
The first 2 hours are survivable if you pace yourself.
It's hours 8 through 12 where people fall apart. Your body is screaming to stop. You're hypothermic. You're running on fumes. That's when Beck watches closest. He's looking for the moment you quit mentally.
Then we make sure that moment never comes, Maya said. Show me the worst parts, the sections where people usually fail.
For the next 4 hours, they ran her through simulations. Garrison explained Beck's psychology, how he'd add unexpected obstacles, change parameters mid-course, create situations designed to trigger panic or frustration. KC demonstrated the physical techniques that made impossible tasks merely extremely difficult. At 2300 hours, they took a break. Maya was already exhausted, and the actual course hadn't even started yet. Garrison handed her a water bottle. Ma'am, can I ask why you're doing this? You could postpone the test. Establish your command first. Make Beck wait.
Because every day I wait, he gets stronger and I get weaker.
Right now, I have momentum from this morning. If I back down tomorrow, that momentum dies and he wins without even having to fight. KC smiled grimly. He's not going to make it easy, ma'am. He'll have people watching for any mistake, any shortcut, any reason to disqualify you.
Good, Maya said. Let them watch. Let them see exactly what their new commanding officer is made of.
They trained until 0200 hours, when Maya finally called it. She had 4 hours to sleep before the course began. 4 hours to prepare her mind for 12 hours of hell. As she walked back to her quarters, she found Petty Officer Kim waiting outside her door.
Ma'am, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but Beck's been making calls all evening. He's bringing in observers from 3 other SEAL teams. He's making this into a spectator event. If you fail, everyone in the community will know about it by tomorrow night.
Maya felt the weight of that settle onto her already exhausted shoulders.
Then I'd better not fail.
Maya's alarm went off at 0545 hours, 15 minutes before the course was scheduled to begin. She'd managed exactly 3 hours and 40 minutes of sleep, her mind too wired to fully shut down despite her body's exhaustion. Her legs ached from the training session with Garrison and KC, and she knew that pain was nothing compared to what was coming. She pulled on her wetsuit in the pre-dawn darkness, her hands moving automatically through the familiar motions. Outside her window, she could see lights blazing around the beach staging area. Beck had turned this into a show. When she arrived at the beach at 5:58, she understood just how much of a show it was. 50 people stood in loose formation on the sand. Maya recognized senior instructors from across the base, officers from other SEAL teams, even a few faces from Naval Special Warfare Command headquarters. Deck stood at the center like a ringmaster, his expression carefully neutral, but his eyes gleaming with anticipation. Captain Morrison was there too, standing slightly apart from Beck's group. He caught Maya's eye and gave the smallest nod. Not encouragement exactly, but acknowledgement that he was watching. "Lieutenant Chen," Beck called out, his voice carrying across the beach. "Glad you could make it. Are you familiar with the Advanced Combat Water Survival Qualification course?"
"I've reviewed the parameters, Master Chief."
"Reviewed them? Good, good."
Beck smiled, and Maya felt her stomach tighten.
"Then you know this is a 12-hour endurance test designed to evaluate whether an instructor has the physical and mental capacity to lead SEAL training operations. You'll complete a 5-mile ocean swim, followed by underwater obstacle navigation, followed by a combat simulation scenario, all while carrying full combat gear weighing approximately 60 pounds.
"I understand, Master Chief."
"Excellent. Then let's review the safety protocols. You'll be accompanied by 2 safety divers who will monitor your progress. If at any point you signal for assistance or fail to meet the minimum performance thresholds, the test will be terminated and recorded as a failure. Do you have any questions?"
Maya looked at the water. The Pacific Ocean was dark and churning, the morning wind creating whitecaps that crashed against the shore. Water temperature would be around 58 degrees, cold enough to induce hypothermia within hours. "Who are the safety divers, Master Chief?"
Beck gestured to 2 instructors Maya didn't recognize. "Petty Officers Morrison and Blake. Both are certified rescue swimmers with extensive experience in cold water operations." Maya noticed that neither Morrison nor Blake would meet her eyes. Beck's people, then. Men who would follow his orders, not hers. "One more thing," Beck added, his voice taking on a formal tone.
Given the dangerous nature of this course, I've asked Lieutenant Commander Torres from SEAL Team 5 to serve as the official observer. He'll verify that all safety protocols are followed and that the test is conducted fairly." A man in his late 30s stepped forward, tall, fit, with the confident bearing of someone who'd seen combat. Torres nodded to Maya professionally, but she caught something in his expression. Sympathy, maybe, or pity.
"Lieutenant Chen," Torres said quietly. "I've completed this course twice. It's brutal, but survivable if you pace yourself. Don't try to be a hero in the first 2 hours. Save your strength for when it matters." "Thank you, sir."
Beck checked his watch. "It's now 600 hours. Lieutenant Chen, are you ready to begin?"
Maya looked at the dark water, then at the crowd of observers, then back at Beck. This was his trap. His way of proving she didn't belong here.
But as she stood there, she realized something that Beck hadn't counted on. She'd been proving herself to men like him since she was 18 years old. This was just another test in a lifetime of tests.
"I'm ready, Master Chief."
"Then let's begin. Safety divers, take your positions." Morrison and Blake waded into the surf, their bright orange safety vests marking them clearly. Maya adjusted her gear, 63 pounds of equipment that would feel like 600 by the end of this, and walked toward the water. The first wave hit her legs, and the cold was shocking even through the wetsuit. She pushed forward, diving under the next wave, letting the ocean close over her head. The world became dark and muffled, the roar of the surf fading to a deep, rhythmic thunder. She surfaced,
oriented herself toward the first marker buoy visible about a mile offshore, and began swimming. The first hour was manageable. Maya fell into the rhythm she'd practiced with KC, steady, efficient strokes that conserved energy while maintaining forward progress. The safety divers flanked her at a distance, their heads bobbing in the swells like seals. By hour 2, the cold had started to penetrate. Her fingers were numb, making it harder to maintain her grip on the equipment harness. The weight of the gear pulled at her shoulders with every stroke, and she could feel the early stages of muscle fatigue setting in. At the 2-hour mark, she reached the first obstacle, a submerged cargo net she had to navigate through while maintaining her depth and managing her gear. She dove down, the pressure change making her ears pop, and began working through the net's openings. That's when Morrison swam close, his face appearing in her mask's limited field of vision. He was holding something, an underwater slate with writing on it. "Current too strong. Abort now. Your choice." Maya stared at the message, understanding immediately what was happening. Beck had positioned Morrison to offer her an out, a way to quit that she could blame on conditions rather than personal failure. It was almost merciful, if you didn't understand that accepting mercy from Beck meant accepting defeat. She shook her head and pushed past him, forcing her way through the net. Morrison didn't follow immediately. When he finally surfaced behind her, she heard him talking into his waterproof radio, reporting something to Beck on shore. The 3rd hour brought hallucinations, shadows in the water that her oxygen-deprived brain interpreted as threats. Maya knew they weren't real, but her body reacted anyway, dumping adrenaline that burned through her remaining energy reserves. At hour 4, Blake surfaced next to her during a mandatory safety check. "Lieutenant, your core temperature is dropping into the danger zone. Master Chief Beck is recommending we abort the exercise." Maya's teeth were chattering too hard to speak clearly.
Tell Master Chief Beck I'll abort when I fail to meet performance standards. Not before.
Blake's expression shifted. Surprise, maybe respect.
Yes, ma'am. But you need to know, the next section is the worst. The underwater obstacle course. We've had experienced operators quit at this point. Noted.
The underwater obstacle course was a maze of submerged pipes, nets, and barriers that required precise navigation in near-zero visibility. Maya had studied the layout with KC, memorized the pattern. But theory and practice were different things when your body was shutting down from cold and exhaustion. She dove under, following the guide rope that marked the course entrance. The world became dark and claustrophobic, the only sound her own breathing through the regulator and the hammering of her pulse in her ears. The first pipe was narrow, barely wide enough for her body plus the gear. She had to exhale completely to squeeze through, her ribs scraping against the metal. For a moment, she was stuck, the gear catching on something, and panic flared hot and bright in her chest. She forced herself to stop, to think. Panic killed more divers than any physical obstacle. She twisted slowly, felt the gear come free, and pushed through. The next section required her to navigate through a vertical shaft while managing her buoyancy. Too much air in the vest, and she'd shoot to the surface too fast, possibly causing an embolism. Too little, and she'd sink and lose time fighting to maintain depth. She was halfway through when her vision started to tunnel. Oxygen debt, her brain supplied helpfully. You're running out of air. No, she realized. Not running out. Being cut off. She reached back and found the problem. Someone had partially closed her tank valve. Not enough to completely stop the flow, but enough to restrict it, to make every breath a struggle. Morrison and Blake were supposed to be monitoring her equipment. This couldn't be accidental. Maya's hands were too numb to manipulate the valve properly. She tried once, twice, her fingers slipping on the metal. Her vision was narrowing further, dark spots dancing at the edges. She had maybe 30 seconds of consciousness left. 20 seconds. Her hand found the emergency air canister on her vest, a backup system that all combat divers carried. She pulled the release, felt the rush of compressed air into her regulator, and sucked in a desperate breath. The world snapped back into focus. She finished opening her main tank valve, her anger burning through the exhaustion. Beck hadn't just set her up to fail. He'd set her up to die. Maya surfaced explosively, ripping the regulator from her mouth. "Morrison! Blake! To me! Now!" Both safety divers swam over, their faces showing confusion and concern that looked entirely genuine.
Ma'am, what's wrong?
My tank valve was partially closed. Did either of you touch my equipment during the last safety check? They looked at each other, then back at her. "No, ma'am," Blake said. "We've maintained observation distance per Master Chief Beck's orders. We haven't touched your gear since the initial check." Maya's mind raced. If they hadn't done it, and she hadn't done it, then someone must have tampered with her equipment before she entered the water. Which meant this had been planned from the start. "I'm continuing the course," she said, "but I want both of you on record as witnesses. My tank valve was deliberately sabotaged. Understood?" Morrison's face went pale. "Ma'am, if that's true, we need to abort immediately and report." "We report it when I finish this course, not before. I'm not giving Beck the satisfaction." She dove back under before they could argue, her rage providing fuel that her body no longer had. Someone had tried to kill her, or at the very least, tried to create a situation where she'd have to abort, and Beck could claim she wasn't physically capable of the job. The rest of the underwater section passed in a blur of pain and determination. Every muscle screamed. Her hands were so numb she could barely feel the guide ropes. But she pushed through, section by section, obstacle by obstacle. When she finally surfaced at the completion marker, 6 hours had passed. She was halfway through. A boat pulled alongside her. Beck was aboard, along with Torres and Captain Morrison. "Lieutenant Chen," Beck called out, his voice carrying false concern. "Your safety divers reported an equipment malfunction. As the safety officer for this exercise, I'm ordering you to abort the test immediately." Maya looked up at him, water streaming from her hair, her whole body shaking with cold and exhaustion. "Master Chief, I will complete this course, or I will fail it through inability to meet standards. But I will not abort because of equipment that was sabotaged before I entered the water." The word sabotaged landed like a bomb. Torres's head snapped toward Beck. Captain Morrison's expression hardened. "That's a serious accusation, Lieutenant," Morrison said carefully. "It's a serious crime, sir. My tank valve was deliberately closed partway through the underwater section. I had to use my emergency air to avoid losing consciousness." Beck's face remained neutral, but Maya saw something flicker in his eyes. Calculation. "Lieutenant, equipment malfunctions happen. The stress of the course can cause hallucinations, confusion. I know the difference between a malfunction and sabotage, Master Chief. The valve was hand-tight when I checked it this morning. It was loosened enough to restrict airflow, but not enough to be noticed during a standard safety check. That requires knowledge and deliberate action." Torres spoke up. "Master Chief Beck, I'll need to inspect Lieutenant Chen's equipment as part of my official observation duties. If there's evidence of tampering, this becomes a criminal investigation." "Of course," Beck said smoothly. "I welcome a full investigation. But first, Lieutenant Chen needs medical attention. She's been in the water for 6 hours in hypothermic conditions. She needs to abort this test before she causes herself permanent harm." "I'm not aborting." "Lieutenant." "I said I'm not aborting!" Maya's voice carried across the water, loud enough that the observers on the beach, who had moved to the completion point to watch, could hear her. "You designed this test to break me, Master Chief.
When that didn't work, someone sabotaged my equipment. And when that didn't work, you're trying to force me to quit by claiming medical necessity. I'm not giving you the satisfaction." She turned to Torres.
"Sir, what are the performance standards for the second half of this course?" Torres looked between her and Beck, clearly torn.
"The combat simulation requires you to complete a series of physical tasks while sleep-deprived and exhausted. You have to demonstrate that you can still function effectively even after extreme stress."
"Then let's continue. I'll complete the tasks or I'll collapse trying. But I will not quit." Captain Morrison leaned over the boat's rail. "Lieutenant, I'm ordering you to receive medical evaluation before continuing." "Sir, with respect, if you order me to abort this test, Master Chief Beck wins. Every instructor on this base will know that I couldn't complete the qualification course. My authority will be undermined before I've even had a chance to implement any changes." Morrison's jaw worked. He understood the trap just as clearly as Maya did. If he forced her to abort, he was confirming Beck's narrative that she wasn't qualified. If he let her continue and she died, he'd be responsible for that, too. "Medic," Morrison finally said, "get in the water and do a field assessment. If Lieutenant Chen is medically capable of continuing, she continues. If not, I'm pulling her out, and that's final." A Navy corpsman dove into the water and swam to Maya. He checked her pupil response, her coordination, her core temperature using a special thermometer. "Sir, her core temp is 89 degrees. That's stage 2 hypothermia. She's at risk for cardiac arrhythmia. I recommend immediate warming and medical monitoring." "Can she function?" Morrison pressed. The corpsman hesitated. "Physically, maybe, for a short time, but if she continues to lose core temperature—" "The simulation is on land," Maya interrupted, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'll warm up as soon as I'm out of the water. I can do this." The corpsman looked at Captain Morrison, who looked at Torres, who looked at Beck. Beck's face was unreadable, but Maya could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. If he pushed too hard to stop her, it would look like he was afraid she might succeed. "Let her continue," Beck finally said. "But if she collapses during the simulation, it proves exactly what I've been saying, that these modern standards put people in danger." Maya hauled herself onto the boat, her legs shaking so badly she nearly fell. Someone wrapped a thermal blanket around her shoulders. Someone else handed her a bottle of water that she drank mechanically, her body craving hydration even as her mind screamed at her to just stop, to give up, to let this be over. The boat took her to shore, where the simulation course had been set up. A series of obstacles designed to test combat-relevant skills while exhausted: shooting accuracy, grenade throwing, tactical decision-making, casualty evacuation. Maya stepped off the boat onto the sand, and her legs immediately buckled. She caught herself on the boat's rail, held herself upright through sheer willpower. The crowd of observers had grown. Word had spread across the base that the new commanding officer was attempting Beck's notorious qualification course, that there had been an equipment failure, that she was continuing anyway. Maya counted at least 70 people now, most of them in uniform, all of them watching to see if she would break. Garrison was there, standing at the back of the crowd. When she caught his eye, he nodded once. A gesture of respect, or maybe solidarity. The man who'd splashed water in her face yesterday was now silently rooting for her to survive. Kim was there too, her face tight with worry. And KC, and the 3 recruits who'd come to her office with their complaints: Sullivan, Martinez, and Jackson. They looked terrified for her. "Lieutenant Chen," Beck announced loudly, "you will now complete the combat simulation phase. You have 2 hours to demonstrate proficiency in weapons handling, tactical decision-making, and combat casualty care. The standards are the same as they would be for any operator returning from a prolonged mission in hostile conditions. Do you understand?" "Yes, Master Chief." "Then begin."
The first station was marksmanship. Maya's hands were shaking so badly from the cold that she could barely grip the pistol. She fired at the targets, center mass, headshots, multiple target engagement. Her accuracy was maybe 60%, well below her normal 95%, but still within the minimum passing standard. The second station required her to low crawl under barbed wire while someone fired live rounds over her head, a simulation of advancing under fire. Her body screamed in protest, muscles that had been pushed for 7 hours refusing to cooperate. She made it through, tearing her wetsuit and scraping skin off her elbows. But she made it through.
The third station was a tactical decision-making scenario. They gave her a map, a situation brief about a hostage rescue, and asked her to plan the operation. Her brain felt like it was moving through mud, thoughts forming slowly and with great effort. But the training was there, buried deep enough that even exhaustion couldn't erase it. She outlined her plan, justified her decisions, and passed. The fourth station was combat casualty care. They presented her with a simulated wounded operator, actually one of the instructors playing the role, and told her to triage and treat his injuries while explaining her actions. She was halfway through applying a tourniquet when the wounded operator grabbed her wrist. "You're making a mistake," he hissed quietly, too low for the observers to hear. "The tourniquet goes above the wound, not below it. Beck is watching for any error he can use to fail you." Maya looked down. The man was right. In her exhaustion, she'd positioned the tourniquet incorrectly, a mistake that could have killed a real patient. But something about the way he'd warned her didn't sit right. She looked at the simulated wound more carefully. The bleeding was actually coming from a location that made above the wound placement anatomically impossible without cutting off blood flow to the entire limb. This was another trap. Beck had set up the scenario with an unconventional injury placement. The correct answer by standard protocol would actually be wrong in this specific case. "The tourniquet goes below the wound in this scenario," Maya said clearly, loud enough for the evaluators to hear. "Because the wound location is at the junction of the femoral artery and the external iliac. Placing the tourniquet above would require positioning it on the pelvic bone, which is impossible. Below wound placement is unconventional, but necessary given the injury location." The instructor playing the wounded operator released her wrist, a slight smile crossing his face. "That's correct, Lieutenant." Beck's expression darkened. He'd expected her to fall for the trap, to make the obvious choice that would actually be wrong. The final station was casualty evacuation. She had to carry a 200-pound dummy representing a wounded operator across 50 yards of beach while being timed. Maya bent down to lift the dummy, and her vision went gray at the edges. Her legs simply did not have the strength left. 8 hours of cold water immersion, carrying 60 pounds of gear, and now this. She tried to lift and failed. Tried again and failed again. The crowd was silent, watching. Beck stepped forward. "Lieutenant Chen, you've made a valiant effort, but it's clear that you've reached your physical limits. There's no shame in acknowledging—" "I'm not done yet," Maya gasped. She couldn't lift the dummy in a standard carry. Her muscles simply wouldn't cooperate. But there were other ways to move heavy loads. She'd learned them in combat life-saving courses, practiced them in training. She grabbed the dummy's harness and began dragging it, using her body weight and what remained of her leg strength to pull it across the sand. It was slower, less elegant than a proper carry, but it was movement. 50 yards might as well have been 50 miles. Each step was agony. Her heart was hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. The gray edges of her vision were closing in, tunneling down to a single point of focus. 25 yards. Halfway. Her legs gave out. She fell to her knees in the sand, still gripping the dummy's harness. "Lieutenant Chen!" someone was saying, but she couldn't tell who.
She crawled forward on her hands and knees, dragging the dummy with her. Not elegant, not proper technique, but still moving forward. 30 yards. 40 yards.
Someone was shouting at her to stop, that she'd proved her point, but the words were distant and meaningless. The only thing that mattered was the finish line, still 10 yards away. 45 yards. Her arms gave out. She collapsed face first into the sand, unable to move any further. She'd failed. Beck had won. Then hands were under her arms, lifting her up. She blinked, trying to focus, and realized Garrison had broken from the crowd. He was supporting her weight, helping her stand. "Chief, what are you—" Beck started. "The standard is that the casualty reaches the designated point, Master Chief," Garrison said loudly. "It doesn't specify that the rescuer has to be conscious when they get there. Lieutenant Chen maintained her grip on the casualty. I'm simply providing the support she needs to complete the evolution." Other instructors were moving now. KC, Kim, even some of Beck's own people. They formed a line alongside Maya, not touching her, not violating the rules of the test, but there, present, showing where they stood. Maya found her footing, took one step, then another. Garrison stayed close, but let her move under her own power. Her legs were shaking so badly it was almost comical, but they held. 5 yards. 3 yards. 1 yard. She crossed the line and released the dummy's harness. Then she fell to her knees again, this time in victory rather than failure. The crowd was silent for a moment. Then someone started clapping. One of the recruits, Sullivan maybe. The applause spread, growing louder, until 70 people were applauding a woman who'd just completed an impossible test while someone had actively tried to make her fail. Beck stood alone, his expression carved from stone. Torres stepped forward, his voice carrying official authority. "Lieutenant Chen has successfully completed all phases of the Advanced Combat Water Survival Qualification course. Her performance meets or exceeds the minimum standards in all categories. The test is complete." Maya looked up at Beck from her position on the sand. "Master Chief," she said, her voice hoarse but clear. "I believe you wanted to prove something today. So did I. I think we're both done now." The medical bay was cold and bright, and Maya couldn't stop shivering despite the thermal blankets they'd piled on her. 2 corpsmen worked to raise her core temperature while a doctor monitored her vitals, his face showing the kind of professional concern that meant she'd pushed herself further than anyone had expected her to survive. "Core temp is up to 92 degrees, one of the corpsmen announced. "She's out of immediate danger." The doctor, a lieutenant commander named Harris, shook his head slowly. "Lieutenant Chen, you're either the toughest officer I've ever treated or the most reckless. Possibly both. Another 30 minutes in that water, and we'd be having a very different conversation." Maya tried to respond, but her teeth were still chattering too hard to form words properly. "Don't try to talk yet. Your body needs to focus on warming up." Harris made notes on his tablet. "I'm keeping you here for observation for the next 6 hours minimum. You're dehydrated, hypothermic, and showing early signs of rhabdomyolysis. Do you understand what that means?" She managed a nod. Rhabdomyolysis, muscle tissue breaking down and releasing proteins into the bloodstream that could damage the kidneys. The same condition that had sent recruit Davidson to Balboa Medical Center. The irony wasn't lost on her. "I need to know," Harris said quietly, leaning closer so the corpsman couldn't hear. "Did you really experience equipment sabotage out there? Or was that the hypothermia talking?" Maya met his eyes. "My tank valve was deliberately tampered with, Commander." "I know the difference between equipment failure and sabotage." Harris straightened, his expression troubled. "Then you need to know that Master Chief Beck was in here 20 minutes ago asking about your condition.
He seemed very interested in whether you'd be coherent enough to make statements about what happened during the test. What did you tell him? That patient confidentiality prevents me from discussing your medical status with anyone except command staff with proper authorization. He didn't like that answer. Harris paused. Lieutenant, I've been at this facility for 3 years. I've treated a lot of training injuries. Some of them made sense, some of them didn't. If you're planning to investigate the safety protocols here, my medical records might be useful to you. Before Maya could respond, the door opened and Captain Morrison entered, his face grim. Doctor, I need 5 minutes with Lieutenant Chen. Sir, she needs rest. 5 minutes, Doctor. This can't wait. Harris nodded reluctantly and stepped outside with the corpsman, leaving Maya alone with Morrison. Morrison pulled up a chair next to her bed. First things first, that was either the most impressive thing I've seen in 30 years of service, or the most foolish. I haven't decided which yet. Permission to speak freely, sir? Granted. It was both. Morrison's laugh was short and bitter. Fair enough. Lieutenant Commander Torres has completed his initial inspection of your diving equipment. He found clear evidence that your tank valve had been manually adjusted to restrict airflow. The positioning and torque marks indicate it was done by someone with technical knowledge of dive systems. Maya's hands clenched under the blankets. Beck. We don't have proof it was Beck himself. It could have been any of the instructors who had access to your gear before the test. Torres is conducting interviews now, but without witnesses or physical evidence connecting a specific person to the tampering. Morrison shook his head. This is serious, Lieutenant. This is attempted murder, or at minimum, reckless endangerment with intent to cause serious bodily harm. Then we investigate it properly, sir. Interview everyone who had access to the equipment staging area. Pull security footage if it exists. Document everything. I've already started that process, but here's the problem. Beck has requested an emergency inquiry into your fitness for command. He's claiming that your decision to continue the test, despite hypothermia and equipment failure, demonstrates reckless disregard for safety protocols and poor judgment under stress. He's got 3 instructors willing to testify that you were clearly impaired, but refused medical guidance. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the trap tighten around her. So if I'd quit, I would have proved I wasn't physically capable. And because I didn't quit, I've proved I have poor judgment. Either way, Beck wins. Not necessarily. Torres's official report states that your decision to continue was within acceptable parameters for a qualification test, and that your performance throughout the course demonstrated exceptional competence and determination. He's recommending you for a commendation for completing the course under adverse conditions. That won't matter to Beck's allies. Morrison stood and walked to the window. No, it won't. Which is why we need to move fast. I'm convening a formal board of inquiry into the equipment tampering. If we can prove Beck or one of his people deliberately sabotaged your gear, it undermines his entire narrative. He stops being the guardian of standards and becomes a criminal. How long will the inquiry take? Officially, 2 to 3 weeks. But Beck knows what's coming. He'll use that time to shore up his position, call in favors, maybe manufacture evidence that supports his version of events. You need to be ready for that. A knock at the door interrupted them. Kim entered, her face flushed with urgency. Sir, ma'am, you need to know what's happening out there. The recruits, Sullivan, Martinez, Jackson, and 15 others. They've submitted formal statements supporting Lieutenant Chen. They're documenting safety violations, training incidents, everything. They're risking their entire SEAL careers to come forward. Morrison's eyebrows shot up. 18 recruits? That's nearly half the current training class. Yes, sir. And it's not just recruits. 4 junior instructors have also submitted statements. They're all saying the same thing, that the current safety protocols are inadequate,
that complaints are systematically suppressed, and that Beck's influence creates a culture where people are afraid to report problems.
Maya tried to sit up, but Harris appeared in the doorway and pushed her gently back down. "Lieutenant, you're not going anywhere for at least 4 more hours. Doctor's orders." "But the recruits are being brave," Morrison said firmly. "Now you need to be smart. Rest, recover, and let me handle the immediate crisis. When you're medically cleared, we'll strategize our next moves." After Morrison and Kim left, Maya lay in the medical bay bed, staring at the ceiling and running scenarios through her mind. 18 recruits and 4 instructors. That was enough testimony to establish a pattern. But Beck had been at this facility for 12 years. He would have contingency plans, ways to discredit the witnesses, evidence that made them look like disgruntled troublemakers rather than legitimate whistleblowers. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Lieutenant Chen, this is KC. Don't respond to this message. Just know that some of us have been keeping our own records, files that Beck doesn't know about. When you're ready, we'll talk." Maya deleted the message immediately, but the implications sent her mind racing. KC had evidence, documentary evidence that Beck didn't know existed. That changed everything. Another text, this time from Garrison. "Ma'am, I just want you to know, what you did today changed minds, mine included. Some of the instructors who've been on Beck's side for years are questioning things now. You proved something today that words never could have." She wanted to respond, but Harris was watching her from across the room, and she suspected Beck might have found a way to monitor her communications. Instead, she closed her eyes and focused on recovery. The real battle was just beginning, and she needed to be at full strength for it. 4 hours later, Harris finally cleared her for limited duty. Limited meaning you go straight to your quarters, sleep for 12 hours, and don't do anything more strenuous than walking to the bathroom. Understood? Understood, Doctor. I'm serious, Lieutenant. Your body has been through extreme trauma. You need recovery time, or you'll end up right back here with kidney failure, or worse. Maya signed the discharge papers and walked out of the medical bay into the early evening air. The sun was setting over the Pacific, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that would have been beautiful if she'd had the energy to appreciate them. She made it halfway across the quad before she saw Beck waiting for her near the administrative building. He was alone, his posture relaxed, but his eyes were cold. "Lieutenant Chen, glad to see you're recovering well." Maya stopped, maintaining a professional distance. "Master Chief?" "Quite a performance today. You've certainly made an impression on the recruits and some of the junior instructors." "Very inspiring." "I did what was required to meet the qualification standards." Beck smiled, and it didn't reach his eyes. "You did more than that. You turned a professional qualification test into a political statement. Very clever. Now the recruits see you as some kind of hero, standing up to the mean old Master Chief who tried to break you." "Is there something you want to say to me, Master Chief?" "Just a friendly observation, Lieutenant. You've been at this facility for exactly 36 hours. In that time, you've undermined one of my most experienced instructors, accused me of running unsafe training operations, and convinced nearly half the recruit class to file formal complaints against the training program. That's quite an accomplishment." "The recruits filed those complaints because they witnessed safety violations, Master Chief, not because I convinced them to do anything." "Safety violations?" Beck's voice dripped with contempt. "We've been training SEALs the same way for decades. Suddenly, a 25-year-old lieutenant shows up and decides everything we've built is inadequate. Do you know how arrogant that sounds?" Maya kept her voice level. "Do you know how many recruits have been seriously injured or killed under your protocols, Master Chief? Because I do. I've read every medical report, every incident investigation, every complaint that was filed and buried.
4 deaths in 6 years. 17 serious injuries requiring extended medical care. A washout rate 12% above the Navy average. Those aren't opinions, Master Chief. Those are facts. Beck stepped closer, violating her personal space in a way that was clearly meant to intimidate. Facts can be interpreted many different ways, Lieutenant. Those 4 deaths, all ruled accidental. Those injuries, the price of maintaining the highest standards in the world. That washout rate, evidence that we refuse to compromise on excellence.
I can defend every single one of those numbers.
I'm sure you can. The question is whether those defenses will hold up during a formal board of inquiry. Something flickered across Beck's face. Surprise, maybe, or concern. You're really going to push this? Someone sabotaged my equipment today, Master Chief. Someone tried to make me fail, or possibly tried to kill me. I'm going to find out who, and I'm going to make sure they face consequences. If that leads back to you, then yes, I'm going to push this as far as it needs to go. Beck was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, almost reasonable. Lieutenant, you're new here. You don't understand how things work. This facility operates on relationships, on trust built over years. You can't just blow in here and tear down everything we've built. I'm not trying to tear down anything, Master Chief. I'm trying to fix what's broken.
And what if the people here don't want it fixed? What if they like the system the way it is?
Then they're part of the problem. Beck's reasonable facade cracked. You self-righteous. You have no idea what you're dealing with. You think because you completed one test that you've won? This facility has crushed better officers than you. Walsh thought he could change things too. Look how that turned out for him. The mention of Walsh sent a chill down Maya's spine.
What happened to Commander Walsh, Master Chief?
He left because he couldn't handle the pressure. Because he realized that maintaining standards requires strength he didn't have. He broke, Lieutenant. And you will too, eventually. The only question is how much damage you do before that happens. Maya met his eyes directly.
The difference between Commander Walsh and me, Master Chief, is that I'm not trying to do this alone. I have the recruits' statements. I have junior instructors willing to testify. I have medical documentation and security footage and written records of every violation. Walsh tried to fight you through official channels, through proper procedure. But you're good at working within that system, at making official reports disappear. So I'm not going to play by those rules.
Then what rules are you playing by?
Whatever rules it takes to make sure no more recruits die under your watch.
Beck stared at her for several seconds, and Maya could see him reassessing, recalculating. She'd just declared war, and they both knew it.
You're going to regret this, Lieutenant. Maybe. But at least I'll be able to live with myself.
Beck walked away without another word, leaving Maya standing alone in the gathering darkness. Her whole body ached, her legs were shaking from exhaustion, and she knew she'd just made a powerful enemy, even more dangerous.
But as she looked across the training facility, at the pool where she'd saved Peterson, at the beach where she'd completed Beck's impossible test, at the barracks where 18 recruits had risked everything to tell the truth, she felt something unexpected. Hope. She made it back to her quarters and collapsed onto the bed without bothering to change clothes. Sleep took her immediately, pulling her down into darkness so deep she didn't dream. She woke to pounding on her door. Her phone showed 0430 hours. She'd slept for barely 10 hours, not the 12 Harris had ordered. "Lieutenant Chen, ma'am, you need to wake up." Maya stumbled to the door and opened it to find Kim, her face pale with shock. "Ma'am, there's been an incident. One of the recruits, Sullivan, he's missing. He didn't report for morning formation, and his bunkmate said he left the barracks around 0200 hours. No one's seen him since."
Maya's exhaustion evaporated instantly.
Have they checked the medical bay? The pool area?
Everywhere, ma'am. He's not on base. His wallet and phone are still in his locker, but he's gone.
Alert base security. I want every building searched, every vehicle checked leaving the base. Get me Captain Morrison on the phone right now.
Kim was already dialing.
Ma'am, there's more. Sullivan was one of the recruits who filed statements yesterday. He had the most detailed account of safety violations, and now he's just gone.
Maya's blood ran cold. Sullivan hadn't just disappeared. He'd been disappeared. Someone had made sure the recruit with the most damaging testimony was no longer available to testify. This wasn't about training methods anymore. This was about covering up crimes. And Beck had just shown her exactly how far he was willing to go to protect his kingdom. Maya pulled on her uniform with hands that shook from more than just exhaustion. Sullivan missing wasn't random. It was a message. Beck was showing her what happens to people who threatened his control. Captain Morrison arrived at her quarters within 15 minutes, his face drawn with stress and lack of sleep. Base security has initiated a full search. We've got MPS checking every building, every vehicle. I've also contacted the San Diego Police Department in case he left the base somehow.
He didn't leave voluntarily, sir.
Maya's voice was flat, certain.
Sullivan had the most detailed documentation of Beck's safety violations. He was scheduled to give his formal statement to the Board of Inquiry today. Now he's conveniently gone.
Morrison's jaw tightened. Lieutenant, I understand your suspicions, but we need to focus on facts. A missing recruit could be anything. Personal crisis, family emergency, medical issue.
Without his phone or wallet? In the middle of the night? Hours after filing testimony against the most powerful Master Chief on this base?
Maya shook her head.
Sir, this is witness intimidation, or worse.
Before Morrison could respond, his phone rang. He listened for a moment, his face going pale. We're on our way. He looked at Maya. They found something. The obstacle course staging area. You need to see this. They ran across the base, the early morning darkness still heavy around them. At the obstacle course, a cluster of flashlights marked where base security had gathered. As Maya approached, she saw what had stopped them all. Sullivan's uniform shirt, laid out deliberately on the ground, and written across it, in what looked like mud, "Keep quiet, or you're next." Martinez and Jackson stood nearby, both recruits pale and shaking. When Martinez saw Maya, he stepped forward.
Ma'am, Sullivan told us yesterday he was scared. He said Master Chief Beck cornered him after formation, told him that filing false statements could end his career before it started.
Sullivan said he wasn't going to back down, that someone had to stand up to Beck. And now, his voice broke. Now we don't know if standing up was brave or stupid, Jackson finished quietly. Ma'am, the other recruits who filed statements, they're terrified. Some of them want to withdraw their testimony. Maya looked at the shirt, at the crude threat written across it, and felt something cold and hard settle in her chest.
No one withdraws anything.
This threat, whoever made it, just proved that we're onto something bigger than safety violations. This is criminal behavior, and we're going to expose it.
Even if it gets someone killed?
Martinez asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Before Maya could answer, her phone rang. Unknown number. Lieutenant Chen. Heavy breathing on the other end. Then Sullivan's voice, shaky but alive. Ma'am, it's Sullivan. I'm okay. I'm safe. Relief flooded through her.
Sullivan, where are you? What happened? I can't say over the phone, but ma'am, you need to know. I wasn't taken. I left on my own. I have evidence, real evidence about what Beck has been doing, but I couldn't risk keeping it on base. I had to get it somewhere safe.
What kind of evidence?
Files, video recordings, documents that Beck thought he'd destroyed years ago. Ma'am, it's not just safety violations. It's financial fraud, falsified records, payoffs to keep people quiet. Beck has been running this facility like his personal empire, and anyone who threatens to expose him either got transferred, discredited, or worse.
Maya's mind raced. Sullivan, where did you get these files?
From someone who couldn't come forward themselves. Someone who's been watching Beck for years, collecting evidence, waiting for the right moment to use it. Ma'am, they said you're that moment. You're the first commanding officer strong enough to actually take Beck down. Who gave you the files? Silence. Then, I can't say, not yet. But ma'am, I'm coming back to base. I'll be there in 30 minutes. Just, please make sure Beck doesn't know I'm coming. I need to get these files to Captain Morrison before Beck realizes what I have. The line went dead. Maya turned to Morrison.
Sullivan's alive. He's coming back with evidence against Beck. Files, recordings, documents. He'll be here in 30 minutes.
Morrison's expression shifted from relief to calculation. If Sullivan has what he says he has, this changes everything. But we need to secure him the moment he arrives. If Beck finds out—
He already knows something's happening, Maya interrupted. That shirt was a message. Beck knows someone's talking. He just doesn't know how much they know.
Kim appeared, running toward them.
Ma'am, you need to know. Master Chief Beck just called an emergency instructor meeting. He's gathering everyone in the main briefing room right now.
He's saying there's a security situation that requires immediate action. Maya and Morrison exchanged glances. He's mobilizing his allies, Morrison said, getting everyone together to control the narrative before Sullivan gets back.
Then we need to move faster.
Maya turned to Kim.
Get KC and every instructor you trust. Have them waiting at the main gate when Sullivan arrives. I want witnesses, people who aren't in Beck's pocket, documenting everything from the moment Sullivan steps back on this base.
Yes, ma'am. Maya looked at Martinez and Jackson.
You two, go back to the barracks. Act like nothing's happened. If anyone asks about Sullivan, you don't know anything. Understood?
They nodded and left quickly. Morrison checked his watch. 28 minutes until Sullivan arrives. Beck's meeting is happening now. What's your play, Lieutenant? Maya felt the pieces moving on the board, felt the momentum shifting.
We go to that meeting. We face Beck directly.
And we buy Sullivan the time he needs to get those files into your hands. They walked toward the briefing room, and Maya could hear voices even before they entered. The room was packed. At least 30 instructors, all of Beck's loyalists, along with a few neutral parties who'd been pulled in by the emergency summons. Beck stood at the front, mid-sentence, when they entered. Critical that we present a unified response to these allegations. The Board of Inquiry is tomorrow, and we need to make sure our stories are consistent. He stopped when he saw Maya and Morrison in the doorway. Captain Morrison, Lieutenant Chen, how good of you to join us. I was just briefing the instructor staff on the situation. What situation would that be, Master Chief? Morrison asked coldly. The false allegations being made against this training program by disgruntled recruits. I've gathered the instructors to ensure we're all prepared to testify to the actual facts, rather than the distorted narrative Lieutenant Chen has been promoting. Maya stepped forward.
You mean you've gathered them to coordinate your cover-up, to make sure everyone tells the same lies about safety violations, falsified records, and witness intimidation?
The room went silent. Several instructors shifted uncomfortably. Beck's smile was thin and dangerous. Lieutenant, those are serious accusations. I hope you have evidence to support them, because if not, you're looking at formal charges for defamation and conduct unbecoming an officer.
I have 18 recruit statements documenting systematic safety violations. I have medical records showing a pattern of preventable injuries. I have my own experience with sabotaged equipment during your qualification test, and I have... Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Sullivan's car just entered the base. 2 minutes out.
Additional evidence arriving momentarily. Maya finished. Beck's eyes narrowed. What additional evidence? You'll find out soon enough, Master Chief. Beck turned to the assembled instructors. Gentlemen, this is exactly what I've been warning you about. Lieutenant Chen is conducting a witch hunt, trying to destroy this program's reputation based on nothing but circumstantial complaints and her own paranoid conspiracy theories. When the Board of Inquiry convenes tomorrow, we need to stand together and show them the truth, that this facility maintains the highest standards in naval special warfare.
The highest standards?
Maya's voice cut through the room.
Is that what you call 4 dead recruits in 6 years? Is that what you call tampering with my diving equipment? Is that what you call threatening Sullivan to withdraw his testimony?
I never threatened anyone, Beck said smoothly, and you have no proof that I did.
Sullivan's shirt, found at the obstacle course.
With a written threat on it. That's not proof?
Beck spread his hands. That could have been written by anyone. A recruit playing a prank, a jealous competitor. Without evidence linking it to me specifically, it's just vandalism. Maya felt the trap. Beck was right. Without Sullivan's testimony about being cornered, without proof of who had written the threat, without concrete evidence, it was all circumstantial. The door opened and Garrison entered, his face urgent. He walked directly to Maya and whispered, "Ma'am, Sullivan just arrived at the main gate. But we have a problem. There are 2 MP vehicles there that weren't part of our security plan. Beck must have positioned them there." Maya's blood ran cold. Beck had anticipated this. He'd stationed his people at the gate to intercept Sullivan before the files could reach Morrison. She turned to Morrison. "Sir, we need to get to that gate right now." Beck's smile widened.
What's at the gate, Lieutenant? Expecting someone? Maya ignored him and ran from the briefing room, Morrison and Garrison close behind. They sprinted across the base toward the main gate, where she could see Sullivan's car surrounded by 4 MPs. As they approached, Maya saw Sullivan standing next to his vehicle, a backpack clutched in his hands. The MPs were demanding he hand it over for security inspection.
"Sullivan!" Maya shouted. "Don't give them that bag!"
One of the MPs turned. "Ma'am, this recruit left the base without authorization and returned with suspicious materials. We're required to search." "I'm ordering you to stand down," Morrison said, his captain's rank carrying authority the MPs couldn't ignore. "This recruit is under my direct protection. Whatever materials he has are evidence in an ongoing investigation." The lead MP hesitated, clearly torn between his orders from Beck and Morrison's direct command. That moment of hesitation was all Sullivan needed. He ran toward Maya, holding out the backpack. "Ma'am, it's all here. Everything Beck has been hiding for years." Maya took the backpack, feeling the weight of what it represented. Sullivan was breathing hard, his face flushed with adrenaline and fear. "Ma'am, the person who gave me these files, they said to tell you that they've been waiting 12 years for someone strong enough to use them. They said Beck destroyed Commander Walsh because Walsh tried to go through official channels. But these files, they're proof that can't be buried or explained away. Financial records showing Beck took kickbacks from equipment suppliers in exchange for approving substandard gear. Video footage of him destroying safety complaints. Recordings of him threatening recruits and instructors. All of it." Maya opened the backpack. Inside were dozens of USB drives, folders of documents, and what looked like several external hard drives. "Who gave you this?" Morrison asked. Sullivan glanced around nervously. "They made me promise not to say until Beck was in custody.
But they said you'd know soon enough. They said they're done being afraid.
Beck arrived then, flanked by 6 of his most loyal instructors. His face was carefully controlled, but Maya could see rage burning behind his eyes. Captain Morrison, I must protest this irregular procedure. That recruit left the base without authorization and returned with materials that should be properly examined through security protocols. These materials are evidence in a criminal investigation, Master Chief, Morrison said firmly. They're now in my custody, and they will be turned over to the Naval Criminal Investigative Service within the hour. On what grounds? Based on the word of a recruit who violated base security protocols? This is ridiculous. Morrison pulled out his phone and made a call. This is Captain Richard Morrison, Base Commander, Naval Special Warfare Training Center.
I'm requesting immediate NCIS response for evidence collection in a case involving equipment tampering, witness intimidation, financial fraud, and falsification of official records. Suspect is Master Chief Petty Officer Roland Beck. The words hung in the morning air like a death sentence. Beck's controlled facade finally cracked. This is a setup. A coordinated attack by officers who want to destroy everything this facility stands for. You're all going to regret this. The only person who's going to regret anything is you, Master Chief. The voice came from behind them. Everyone turned. Dr. Harris walked toward them, his face set with determination. I'm the one who gave Sullivan those files. I've been documenting Beck's activities for 8 years, ever since I watched him threaten a recruit who tried to report a safety violation. I kept quiet because I was afraid, because I'd seen what happened to people who stood up to him.
But after watching Lieutenant Chen risk her life to complete that qualification test, after watching her refuse to be intimidated, I realized I'd been a coward long enough. Beck stared at Harris, betrayal and fury warring on his face. You? I trusted you. I protected you when that incident happened with the medical supplies. You mean when you convinced me to falsify medical records to hide training injuries? Yes, you protected me. By making me complicit in your crimes. That's how you operate, isn't it, Master Chief? You find people's weaknesses and you use them. You make them part of your system so they can't expose you without exposing themselves. Harris turned to Morrison. Captain, those drives contain 8 years of documentation. Every falsified safety report. Every recruit who was threatened into silence. Every instructor who was transferred or destroyed for questioning Beck's methods. And yes, financial records showing that Beck has been taking money from equipment suppliers for years. Beck lunged toward Harris, but Garrison and KC stepped between them, physically blocking him. You're finished, Beck snarled at Harris. You'll never work in the Navy again. I'll destroy you. You already destroyed me, Harris said quietly. 8 years ago, when you made me compromise my medical ethics. At least now I'm destroying you back. 2 NCIS agents arrived within 20 minutes. They took possession of the files, took statements from Sullivan, Harris, Maya, and Morrison. They arrested Beck on preliminary charges of obstruction of justice and witness intimidation, with additional charges pending review of the evidence. As the agents led Beck away in handcuffs, he looked back at Maya one final time. This isn't over, Lieutenant. You think you've won, but you have no idea how deep this goes. How many people will fall when this all comes out?
Then they deserve to fall,
Maya said simply.
Everyone who chose protecting their careers over protecting their integrity deserves whatever's coming.
Beck was gone, driven away in an NCIS vehicle, and the instructors who'd gathered to support him dispersed quickly, distancing themselves from the investigation. Morrison turned to Maya, exhaustion and relief competing on his face. Lieutenant, I need to brief Naval Special Warfare Command on what just happened.
This is going to trigger investigations across multiple facilities. Beck's methods weren't unique. He trained a generation of instructors who've spread throughout the SEAL community. When this evidence becomes public, it's going to shake the entire special warfare enterprise.
Good, Maya said. Maybe it needs to be shaken. Maybe we need to remember that our mission is protecting the country, not protecting our egos.
The sun was fully up now, morning light washing across the base. Maya looked at the training pool, at the obstacle course, at the barracks where recruits were emerging from morning formation. Sullivan stood nearby, looking shell-shocked by everything that had happened.
Sullivan,
Maya said gently.
You did the right thing, the brave thing. Because of you, this facility is going to change. The whole community is going to change.
Ma'am, I was scared the whole time. I almost backed out a dozen times.
Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's being terrified and doing what's right anyway. You just taught everyone on this base what that looks like.
Over the next 6 weeks, the investigation expanded. The files Harris had collected led to 14 additional arrests, including 3 senior officers who'd been aware of Beck's activities and had chosen to look the other way. 2 equipment suppliers were charged with fraud and bribery. 5 training facilities were placed under review for similar safety violations. Beck himself was court-martialed and sentenced to 8 years in military prison for conspiracy, obstruction of justice, witness intimidation, and fraudulent receipt of government funds. His rank was reduced to E1, and he was given a dishonorable discharge. Maya implemented new safety protocols across the training facility, working with Garrison, who'd proven himself a valuable ally, to maintain high standards while eliminating unnecessary risks. The recruit injury rate dropped by 43% in the first month. The washout rate decreased by 15%, but the quality of graduates actually improved according to fleet commanders. 6 months after the investigation concluded, Maya stood in the same briefing room where she'd confronted Beck. But now it was filled with instructors she'd trained, recruits who'd completed the program under her new protocols, and senior officers from Naval Special Warfare Command. Admiral Patricia Sanders, commander of Naval Special Warfare Command, stood at the front of the room. Lieutenant Chen, your actions at this facility prevented injuries and quite possibly saved lives. More importantly, you exposed systemic problems that we'd allowed to fester for too long. The courage you showed in standing up to entrenched power structures, even at great personal risk, represents the finest traditions of naval service. Sanders stepped forward and pinned the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal on Maya's uniform. You're being promoted to Lieutenant Commander and reassigned to Naval Special Warfare Command Headquarters, where you'll oversee safety and training protocols across all SEAL training facilities. Your mission is simple: spread the changes you implemented here throughout the entire community. Make sure what happened under Beck's command never happens again. After the ceremony, Maya walked outside and found Garrison waiting. Congratulations, ma'am. Or should I say, Commander?
You should say Maya. We're off duty, Derek.
Garrison smiled. It still looked strange on his face. The man who'd splashed water at her in anger was now one of her closest allies. I wanted to thank you, he said, for giving me a second chance, for showing me there was a better way to do this job. I was so stuck in my ways, so convinced that the old methods were the only methods. You proved me wrong.
You proved yourself wrong. I just gave you the opportunity.
They stood together, watching recruits run through training exercises, challenging but safe, demanding but supportive. Do you ever think about that first morning? Garrison asked. When I was such an ass to you at the pool?
Every day. Because it taught me something important. Sometimes the people who resist change the hardest are the ones who need it most. You weren't a bad person, Derek. You were a good person, trapped in a bad system.
All you needed was someone to show you there was another way. Sullivan walked past, now graduated and assigned to SEAL Team 3. He stopped when he saw Maya and snapped a sharp salute. "Commander Chen, good to see you, ma'am."
Congratulations on your graduation, Sullivan. I heard you finished top of your class.
"Yes, ma'am. Turns out when you're not spending all your energy being terrified of your instructors, you can actually focus on learning to be a SEAL," he grinned. "Who knew?" As Sullivan walked away, Maya reflected on everything that had changed since that morning when Beck had tried to humiliate her with a splash of pool water. He'd meant it as a dismissal, a way to put her in her place. Instead, it had been the spark that brought down an entire corrupt system. Kim approached, now promoted to Chief Petty Officer and serving as Maya's deputy.
Commander, your transport to headquarters is ready. They are expecting you tomorrow for your first briefing.
Maya took one last look at the facility. The pool where she'd saved Peterson. The beach where she'd completed Beck's impossible test. The barracks where 18 recruits had found the courage to speak truth to power.
You know what I learned here, Kim? What's that, ma'am? That the splash of water that's meant to drown you can become the wave that lifts everyone else. Beck tried to humiliate me, to prove I didn't belong. Instead, he proved exactly why I was here. Sometimes the people who underestimate you do you the biggest favor of all. They give you the chance to show them just how wrong they were.
Maya walked toward the waiting vehicle, leaving behind a facility that would never be the same. She'd arrived as an outsider, been tested by fire and ice and sabotage, and emerged as the catalyst for change across the entire SEAL community. The weakling who'd been splashed with water had become the commander who'd changed everything. And that, she thought with satisfaction, was exactly how it should be.